it's a little bit of a spin on how we account for the inventory from the other end in terms of how we rationalize the models that we have and their uses and the implications. So it's a slightly different flavor from accounting, for making sure that we account for all the models in the inventory, but then how do we rationalize their use and make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for the buck. So to start that, and once we are done with that, we can then have a little panel conversation, and then we can get into question and answer session. Mike is going to start that off, and Mike is a principal director in Accenture's risk analytics practice. He specializes in risk model development and validation across a range of risk and product types. He's had a quarter century, I like to call it that, not 25 years, of experience in financial risk modeling, 5 years with Deloitte and PwC, 7 years with the OCC, and with JP Morgan and other banks, and he holds a PhD in mathematical finance from CU NY. And so I think like almost everyone else, Steve has had the role of the private practice, academia, and regulators, and I think he's well positioned to be able to help us go through this next item on how we begin to mature the inventory, even in terms of rationalization. I'm not going to introduce myself. Steve, too, I don't think he needs further introduction. I would, I can, Gotthard, sorry, is that Gotthard or Gotthard? Gotthard, all right. I can currently lead the model risk governance with American Express, and prior to joining American Express, he led the PD and CCAR modeling team at State Street, where he built well over 300 different models, interacting with pretty much everyone in the industry, from internal audit to external regulators. He used to be a manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he had an interesting tale actually just before the session about, and I don't want to, this is not a political thing, but some of the demonstrations, recently in DC, how he saw them right in front of PwC where he used to work. So I thought that was an interesting story until there goes where I used to work. But he has over 12 years of progressive banking experience, in a wide range, risk management, model validation, fraud, statistical modeling, and all of that, and also has a PhD from the University of Pittsburgh. So I feel that, and I think I'm not introducing myself for practical reasons, but also because I don't think I compare favorably with the rest of my panelists, so I'm going to not introduce myself, so Mike.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody, to the conference organizers, to the delegates, and this is a very great opportunity for Accenture, a great opportunity for us to show, demonstrate what we're about, and that we're really much more than technology, that we can offer end-to-end solutions in many areas of the risk modeling space. And we're going to talk about a topic that we've had many interesting interactions with clients about, the concept of model rationalization, right? Rationalization, and we're going to tie it into model risk management considerations. So as was mentioned, it's about optimizing the inventory, managing the inventory, but there's a little more to it, okay? And also the way this will play out varies very much across different types of institutions. So we're going to get some, hopefully today we'll get perspective on what your experiences are, your perspectives are on the topic. So agenda, we will throw out a few key questions. We'll talk about the issue, the so-called problem of plenty, right? When too much is not a good thing. The idea, we'll tie this into model philosophy, usage, horizon. And then we'll top it off by showing our vision of the journey toward rationalization, right? The journey. And it's very much about the journey and not the destination here. And we'll conclude with a panel discussion. So, okay, so now we know there's been a proliferation of models, right? As regulation changes and evolves, as the science of modeling in many areas evolves, we see more and more models, right? So I think banks are taking a step back now and saying, hey, can we use models across different usages, right? Different purposes. One classic example is now, with the new CECL coming out. Banks are looking at their CCAR models and thinking about, hey, I need a term structure of PDs, I need multi-year projections. CCAR models can do some of that, right? May not get you to life of loan, but it's a lot more logical place to start than with your Basel models, right? Your rating models. So that's one example. So, but what does that mean as a model risk manager, right? What is the implication of that? So you can think of a trade-off, right? Reducing the volume of models, will lower your cost, right, to maintain the inventory. But the flip side of that is then you might have models that were built for one purpose that now are not fit for purpose in another use, right? Or you have to challenge how they're being re-engineered for another use. So that is a trade-off you can imagine. So what are the implications for all model risk management? Is there a magic number? Is there an optimum number in the inventory? Probably not, but probably you can have a directional view, right? If you have 1,000+ models, perhaps you know right off the bat. Now, clients have told me, I could go in and I could think, immediately of a way to reduce our models by 100. Okay, so that's one question. Is there a single suite of models that can be used across purposes like rating and CCAR? And how do you operationalize it, right? What steps do you take to put this in place? Who in the organization is going to drive it, right? Who is going to monitor it? There are many elements here. There are governance trade-offs, as I mentioned, right? Can this be done, right? Maybe in some areas it can be done more readily than other areas. Okay, so it's going to depend on where you're looking in the inventory. So these are a bunch of questions we can think about. Problem with plenty. Okay, so here we depict a number of. See if the pointer. Oh, no pointer. Okay. Fine. So multitude of purposes, right? You get a very complex model structure. So here we see the whole panoply of model uses, right? CCAR DFAST, ICAP, Basel III, CECL, and so on, and potential areas of overlap. So we view this as an emerging industry trend. Okay, people are starting to talk about this. We are in fact working with clients on the problem. And what's in it for you, right? What's in it for the client? OpEx efficiency, okay? Just lower number of models, right? We know it's expensive, right? So to get good modelers, it's a tough market out there. So, fewer resources, fewer systems and procedures to maintain, right? More bandwidth for other activities. And, controlled potentially model risk, okay? How? Reduced cost and effort in your model management cycle. A more robust and manageable model inventory. Okay, so we'll very much focus on that bullet. And then there are other considerations like consistency of results and perhaps getting the regulators on board and pleasing them. But let's pose the question, right? Even considering the benefits, and many of these benefits are tangible, right? And we can envision them. What are the downsides from a model risk management and governance perspective? What do we have to worry about? So I did mention the idea of questioning fitness of use. If you take a CCAR model and try to redeploy it for CECL, is that the right thing to do, or should you build from scratch? So to give an example, you could have a CCAR model that has some MRAs on it, right? Some regulatory concerns. Do you want to take that and use it for financial reporting purposes? Okay, so there are a lot of things we have to consider here. Model philosophy and usage horizon. So, right, we can look at this in two dimensions, right? You have kind of a more point-in-time view, right, where you see maybe an ECAP or collection versus a more through-the-cycle view. And then we can think of horizon, right? So, on one end of the spectrum, short horizon, at the other end of the spectrum, say for CCAR, pricing, CECL, a longer-term horizon. And then the upper right quadrant we have where it comes together. So strategic planning, decisioning, right, life of loan. So basically, banks rely on a combination of philosophies and time horizons. So what are the challenges in bridging these from a governance perspective? right? How do we bridge these, and how do we make this work? And what are the challenges to model risk management? I went the wrong way. Okay, so what's the journey look like? Okay, you can think of the short term, right? Quick fixes. So you might have a few very easy, models. Say one good example is when you have some pricing models that are very low materiality. We have one client that has several of those, right? Hundreds of those. Perhaps you have a different process there. You might have automated monitoring, right? You might have redundant models that can be reduced. In the medium term, we can think of priorities or high impact targets that take a little more time to get going. So, identifying material models that are high impact, for regulatory purposes or otherwise, or rationalizing models with multiple uses. Finally, what does a target state look like, right? Integration of data architecture. Streamlining processes, aligning governance structure, rationalizing total model inventory. So these are key milestones in our view. How do we get there? How do we get to long term? Number one, business buy-in. Okay, so we need to get the lines of business on board. We need to build a consensus on prioritizing modeling investments, data and technology, integrated data architecture, streamlined model execution, accessible user platform, and I circle it here, we circle it, policy and governance. So model ownership matrix, model governance framework, model risk management processes. Okay, so summary, banks are facing multiple model governance challenges, maintaining model structure that is loaded with generations of models serving overlapping regulatory and business purposes. Banks should maximize return on investments on risk models through a structured program of rationalization while fulfilling current requirements of things such as CCAR rating, etc. As well as, and what our concern is here, satisfying SR 11.7 guidance. Model rationalization requires a bank to evaluate a lot of current future requirements in its inventory of models to reduce the number of model types, considering, okay, this is key, the trade-offs in terms of model risk, right? So again, volume versus questions of fitness of use. Okay, so the industry is indeed, moving in this direction, but we need to think about the impact on model-specific and aggregate model risk and how one quantifies it. And a few other considerations. I won't read through all of these, but this is our view on it, and we look forward to hearing what people have to say. We have a few questions we'll pose to our panelists. So that's about 10, right?
Okay. Right.
Great.
Very good.
Okay.